Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We know people are still joining and getting on the line. Thank you so much to my soror, Patricia Timmons, for getting everyone set up and admitted into the room. We have officially gone live. So in case this room does max out at 100 participants, we are live through our Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated Omega Eta Zeta Chapter page. So if you do need to share with your family, your friends, this information, if they were not able to make this Zoom, feel free to have them watch the replay later on, or feel free to enjoy and invite them to join us and so they can see this content. I believe all our participants are ready and loaded. And as the room continues to fill up, we will not keep you because we want to make sure that we give our panelists the attention that they deserve. So as we get started this evening, we want to say welcome to Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated Omega Eta Zeta Chapter's presentation of autism awareness, where we will make sure that we advocate, educate, and celebrate Autism Awareness Month. My name is Alicia Queen. I am the president of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, and I want to thank you for joining us on this evening. We truly appreciate you taking a chunk of time out of your schedule for this pertinent information. And we have a packed powerhouse panel for you this evening who has a wealth of knowledge, firsthand knowledge, and we know that they have so much in store for you this evening. Just bit of housekeeping rules. Obviously, make sure that your mics are muted so that none of the information is missed throughout the evening. Always be sure to use the chat box. Let us know where you're chatting from. Let us know where you're calling in from. If you're not in Massachusetts, please let us know where you're crisscrossing across the country. And our goal is to make sure that we stay on agenda this evening. So shout out to all of my chapter sorors from Omega Eta Zeta Chapter for joining this evening. Our committee, soror Patricia Timmons, soror T.A. Daly, who's also one of our panelists, and of course, all of our fellow sorors from Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, our brothers from Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, and all of our fellow Greeks from all of the Divine Nine organizations from the National Pan-Hellenic Council. We truly appreciate every organization, family, network that has said yes to hearing this information. Thank you for joining, because we know that this is valuable, and it was time. As needed, we just want to make sure we pay homage to our founders of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, our five pearls, affectionately known as Most Honorable Arizona Cleaver Stimmons, Most Honorable Pearl Anna Neal, Most Honorable Myrtle Tyler Faithful, and Most Honorable Violet Tyler Goings, and Most Honorable Fanny Petty Watts. Our organization is celebrating our centennial year, 100 years. And why autism awareness is so important with us this year is because just recently we partnered with Micah's Voice to truly focus on autism awareness. So we're making sure that we bring you knowledge, especially from the New England area firsthand. So it's time to get that information to you. Little bit of ground rules. Our objectives is to make sure that by the end of this webinar, we're advocating for children with autism, that we're identifying the different characteristics of autism, and that you all know what resources exist for our children. And so that we can all look at different ways that we can celebrate all of our differences. The goal is to make sure that by the end of this webinar, you have the knowledge to go forth and do great things, and that you feel empowered to do those great things. Ground rules: make sure that every voice is heard. Please be sure to respect people and their differences, and know that everyone has different experiences. We're looking to respectfully agree to disagree. If you're going to bring up a hypothetical during questions, try to maintain confidentiality. And of course, this is a family webinar, so we have audiences of all ages. If you did not notice, our panel does include some phenomenal youth who are just packing it out and doing amazing things in the autism community. And I'll let them speak for themselves later. So be sure to refrain from any explicit language. Now, let's keep moving along. So I want you to meet our panel for this evening. Let me introduce to you my soror, Tia Daly. She has 22 years as a telecom professional, over 12 years serving the community. She is a proud mother of 2 young men, and she serves as our tri-state autism awareness coordinator for Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. And she's in my chapter of Omega Eta Zeta Chapter. Asia Hughes. Mrs. Asia Hughes is a wife and mother of 5 children, 2 of who are on the autism spectrum. She's a compassionate and dedicated, and she's looking to make sure that children and families reach their highest potential, regardless of the circumstances. Asia holds a BS in business management, as well as a master's in teaching. She's also on the track to graduate in June of this year with a master's in social work. And when she's not working or studying, she enjoys spending time with her family. Miss Yahaira Lopez. She is the founder of Autism Spectrum Incorporated, a parent who's led the grassroots organization Building Parents as Experts. She has twin boys on the autism spectrum, as well as ADHD. And Yahaira has over 15 years working with children, youth, and families in many different capacities. She is currently a family partner for Riverside Community Care Mobile Crisis Unit and a Boston Public School alum who's immigrated from Puerto Rico at the age of 4 years old. And then we have James. James is an autism youth advocate who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 12. He's an avid creator of music videos and photography, and he is a lover of all things anime. And we also have Amir, who is an 8th grader in Cambridge Public Schools. He's a co-founder of AWSM BRWN. And if you don't know what that means, it's Awesome Brown. He's a brand that celebrates Black and brown children. He plays cello and likes to program video games. He likes to play and program video games. And he also has an abundance of knowledge about the MBTA. So now my audience, it's time for you to participate. So that's right, we have some questions for you. Please be sure to place in the chat box the answer to a few of these questions. How many children do you all believe have autism? I'll give you all some time.
So it seems like we have like 1 out of 6, 8 out of 10, 1 out of 50, 1 out of 10.
Here on the phone.
Someone just said 1 million.
All right. Those are all some great guesses. But in actuality, 1 out of every 54 children have been diagnosed with autism.
I can hear her on the phone. Wow. No.
So let's go on to that
I can
next
hear her
question.
on the phone, but I can't hear her. Audio is on.
So our next question for you is, what are some characteristics of autism? Now, there are multiple answers to this, so don't feel like you're going to capture them all. Now, I know while you all are still writing, this did come up on the screen, but just to capture a few: problems with social interaction with others, unusual interest in objects, need for sameness, great variation in abilities, and under or overreaction to 1 or more of the 5 senses, which of course are sight, touch, taste, smell, and hearing, as well as repeated actions or body movements. Do any of those surprise you? Let's carry on. Is autism treatable or curable? What are your thoughts? Be sure to put them in the chat box.
So we're seeing a whole bunch of no's, not curable.
So you have no, not curable as your majority. That is correct. There is no cure for autism or the Autism Spectrum Disorder. Treatment consists of therapy, early recognition, excuse me, as well as behavioral, educational, going to see therapists as a family to help reduce symptoms, any type of finding support development that helps possibly to alleviate symptoms. But there's no cure. Now, this question I love. How would you or should you treat someone with autism?
We have respect as any else would love as a human being. Like how the way you want to be treated, more respect, patience, respect and understanding, patience.
So I love that, as a human being and as you want to be treated. We are all human beings. So the person that said, as you want to be treated, what I call that is the golden rule. When you treat others the way that you want to be treated, that's what's known as the golden rule. However, we like to take that a step further. That's known as the platinum rule. You always want to treat people the way that they want to be treated. Take the time to understand people. Take the time to understand their loves, their dislikes, what really makes them thrive. Get to know everyone for who they are and their passions, and then go with that. Like, you see, everyone loves different things, whether it's poetry, whether it's drawing, whether it's photography. Embrace who they are and embrace that, and you're going to find yourself in such a better space because you start understanding who that person is, embracing them for their gifts and their talents, and you're going to see them in a much better light. So my last question is not just for the audience, but also for my panelists to start thinking. Do you believe enough is known about autism? So with that, I know that that's going to start sparking some things in your mind for those that are joining us this evening. But for my panelists, who would like to take that question first? Where do you think we are in terms of the knowledge about autism, in terms of what's available to our communities? Do you think we really know enough?
Sure, I'll answer. Well, I do believe that there are some things known about autism. I just don't feel like we know enough to understand how it fully works and how to fully come towards it when we meet somebody with it. And so I don't know if we'll ever know or if we'll ever want to know is a better question. But until then, we can only hope.
I like the way you put that. Is there enough? But the question is, do we want to know? Do we even want to have access to the information? Do my panelists have any other thoughts that they want to add to the comment that James just made?
I have to agree with him, especially when we're talking about autism in the colored community, right? Because I think that we haven't really talked about autism in the Black, Brown, Latino, and the Asian community. So I think that in our communities, I think we're a little bit behind in terms of truly understanding that disability. And so we have some catching up to do, but at the same time, the spectrum is so wide that it's hard to kind of figure out what research or what children or those with autism or what level of autism do we focus more on. So I'm more concerned with the lack of knowledge of autism in the people of color community.
And I guess to take that as even a step further, is that a question about access? Do we even have that information in our communities outside of, and I can't even dare to say outside of hospitals, because I don't know if hospitals are providing that information. If you all, as parents, if you all as entrepreneurs and activists do not provide the avenues to give us the access to that information, are we truly getting it?
It's true. I have to say, I think it's true, because the reason why I started Autism Sprinter was because I found that there was a deficit in, especially in the Latino community. And I'm like, listen, I don't, I had the opportunity to work in the public school system and work in many different, agencies that provided, services and resources to children, youth, and families. So I had that knowledge, right? So I knew as a parent where to try to find resources and where to get them from. But there are a lot of families that don't know that. They don't understand systems. They don't know where to get these systems. And, most people who have, a disability or mental health, they're not the most civically engaged people that you see in the community, right? So I was able to gain that information, but I also knew that other, parents that I was meeting when I was attending, school related events, and, we're just there. There was such a huge disconnect. And it's not like they give you a diagnosis with like a whole, booklet that says, hey, contact DDS, hey, contact, your health insurance. They don't give you none of that. It's like they give you this, at least for me, when they gave me the diagnosis of autism, I was like, I felt like I was handed a death sentence. It was kind of like, your son is not, he's probably not going to talk. He's not going to do this. And in my head, I was like, oh, like, oh, are we serious? So like everything that he wasn't supposed to do. And at that moment, I'm just sitting there like, okay, like what is happening here? But I absolutely think it's access. And if you notice that a lot of the nonprofits that offer autism resources are not in urban communities. And so there's definitely a deficit in accessing autism and resources in urban communities and communities that are predominantly of color.
And I just wanted to share that we also have to acknowledge that it exists in our communities. I think a lot of times we stereotype it. So my son is high functioning. So with that high functioning piece of it was like, oh, he must be lazy. Oh, he's disorganized because he has the ADHD diagnosis with it. So on top of not really knowing what the characteristics of autism was and not having that knowledge in the community, then you finally find out and it's like, okay, now you have to get everybody else on board. So, and that acknowledgement piece is key. Let's recognize that it does exist in our communities and let's not stereotype what we think it might be, and let's get some actual factual information about what it is. And then we can move forward. We need to stop thinking that we know as opposed to trying to garner the information that is out there, even with the little bit that exists now. As we continue to hopefully grow and gaining knowledge, but to acknowledge the fact that it's there. It's in the African American community. It's in the Latino community. It's in the Asian community. It's not specific to one race or another, or one socioeconomic group or another. It's everywhere. So we have to be forthcoming in making sure that we acknowledge that these symptoms and these diagnoses do exist.
I guess even adding on to that piece of the acknowledgement and understanding that with the acknowledgement means you were actually diagnosed. And even thinking in terms of how our community, even now, with going to get tested, going to a hospital, and actually saying, yes, I have this, I have that. Is there a time where at the age of diagnosis, do you feel you waited too late? Do you feel you didn't wait too late? With all of you, can you share your age of diagnosis? For your son, for the youth, for the parents when your child was diagnosed, for the youth when you were diagnosed?
I would, for us, we were diagnosed, my twins were diagnosed at 18 months because I had them prematurely. So they were preemies. And so at 18 months, we got the diagnosis, and I kind of had to force the doctor to give me a referral for to see a developmental specialist. And every time we would go and, you know, do our check-ins or checkups, you know, with the vaccines and getting, you know, all the yearly checkups and things like that, I kept saying, hey, you know, one of them is not progressing, and, you know, just like the other one. And her thing was like, you stop comparing them. They're twins. They're different. And, you know, at first I was like, okay, she's right. Like, you know, I think I'm kind of being a little over the top. And then at one point I was like, no, there's something here and I need help, you know? And so it was 18 months and we started early intervention services at 2 that lasted all the way to the age of 3. Once they aged out of early interventions, we did a evaluation to see if they can qualify for public school services. One of them actually qualified for services, and the other one was denied because with all the services of like speech, occupational therapy, ABA, which is applied behavior analyst therapies, my other son made significant gains. And so one of them was in public school, one of them was in daycare. And we, you know, 18 months, and you know, one of them now is still has autism, and then they added ADHD, where my other son now has, my other twin has ADHD. So, you know, our house is like a bag of Skittles, you know what I mean? When they burst, it's like, woo, it's all over the place.
I was diagnosed at age 12. I don't really know much about the diagnosis process, but all I remember when I was diagnosed is like, oh, I have this now. Me and my family didn't know much about this, so we went up looking it up in the diagnostics, and we just got, or at least tried to get help from there on.
So, I mean, I can echo what Yahaira said, that once we got the diagnosis, and the diagnosis took a while, right, for to be diagnosed at 12. And I just remember being frustrated because it was almost like people were telling me that there wasn't something, you know, to Yahaira's point, it's like, there's not something there, so don't look for something. But you as a parent of this child now, I'm 12 years in, you know, it's like I kind of know what's going on with my child, and there's something there. And having to kind of fight for and push and find the right people and take the right tests and get to the right supports and get to the right doctors and specialists, it was stressful. It was stressful. And again, to echo what James says, to try to find out what it is we were talking about. You know, it's a diagnosis, and then you get the diagnosis, and you know, the person who diagnoses you walks away and tells you, hey, your child has autism and, you know, inattentive ADHD. And you're like, okay, and you might get some bit semblance of an explanation. But that's not the person that's going to be supporting you in your treatment or, you know, anything like that personally. So it's like, it was a struggle for quite some time. And so, you know, we kind of linked up with the right therapists and clinicians to work with our family.
And Amir?
I was diagnosed at the age of 8. My parents didn't tell me about this until I was in middle school. At first, I didn't exactly know what it was until it was April around this time, where basically they kind of explained to me how like we think differently than like the normal average person. Oh, and we also went on a walk and my mom saw a girl holding her mother's hand and she had like a puzzle piece on it. And she told me like, hey, she's kind of like you. And then I felt like maybe I'm not alone.
I love that. And Asia, go ahead.
My twins were diagnosed right before they turned 2, and it wasn't necessarily something that was pointed out to me. I was more aware of the symptoms and what they presented with. So I had started advocating for different things, as far as like speech and OT and those kind of things. And then I too went the early intervention route, and we did early intervention for speech and OT, and I had started looking at ABA therapists. But from my own research and what I wanted play-based ABA, because children learn in play, and it just made sense to me. And it made the early intervention ABA provider list very small. And when I called, interviewed, it was a very, very difficult process trying to get services set up. And I kind of lost hope with early intervention and ended up going a private route, which has been a lot better for us and my family.
And I just want to thank you all for sharing that, because that transparency is real. That transparency is what a lot of families are facing, is the not knowing, and then trying to navigate, what works for you in your family. And the list that they give you may not necessarily be a list of therapists and doctors who understand how your family operates. And then you kind of have to step outside and find your own support system, and then step outside and try to figure out someone who not only works with your child, but works with you as a parent, works with your schedule, and still allows you all to thrive like a normal family. And around that, it's that something that Amir mentioned that really stuck out for me, that feeling of not being alone, that feeling of realizing I'm not the only one like that. And along those lines, and this can be for youth, for parents, is like, when did you finally feel that when you're in this walk, what does this mean? What is this going to look like? And how am I going to navigate not only my life, but my child's life going forward?
So I think you continue to figure it out as you continue to move through it. You get to the point where you accept that, this is where you are. And for us, it was just making sure that we were supportive of James and what he was doing and things that he liked, and not really treating him differently. And so I don't know if there's necessarily in the last 3 years a point where we've ever said, okay, we got it, because there's always something different. There's always something else that comes up, just when you think you have it. It's parenting, right? So it's like any other parent, where you think that you've gotten to a point and everything is kind of level and even keeled, then you get a teenager, and then it becomes something else that you have to add on to that. So we've accepted it. Obviously, we he's just James. You know, we don't, you know, he's not James with, he's James with autism. Like, we know that it exists. But again, it's something that we continue to grow through. It's something that we continue to work through, because there are challenges that continue to arise throughout. It's not like a one-trick pony where, okay, we got it and this is it. We continue to have to find new methods and change up things and acknowledge things and work on things and go back with our support teams and say, hey, because we don't always know the answers, right? So, you know, working with the support teams to say, okay, so can y'all give us some ideas and some thoughts about how we can work through this? And then you have to understand that you have to incorporate the child too, because we think as parents and adults that we know what's going to be best, what the best method, what the best answer is based off of our experience. But understanding that our experience is not our child's experience or the child's experience or the adult's experience who's living with autism, and recognize that you have to incorporate them. And I think that was key for us in the acknowledgement piece of it and the understanding piece of it, is to make sure that we included him in every step. They explain it at every step. But again, it's ever changing.
Anyone else want to add to that piece? When did you realize, you know, what it meant to have autism, what that walk's going to look like for you?
I wanted to more so want to add to what Amir said. Finding that you are not the only one who is diagnosed with this is like the most rare exotic species within the wild. It's such a great experience to know like you are not alone. And when you like find that first person, it's like, yes, there's people like me. I can finally express how my problems with this thing is. And when you it's like there's a connection finally. You don't always have to feel like I gotta hide these, I gotta keep these suppressed in the deepest, darkest pits of my corner. It's like you can finally open up. It's a really great experience.
I love that. Go ahead, Asia.
I'm going to piggyback off of James and say that parents go through the same thing. We have the same experience, and it's, the diagnosis is very isolative, and it's very important that you connect with other parents and other families that have an autism diagnosis, because it's truly it's a lifeline to be able to connect with other people that have and share similar experiences, because the things that you go through as an autism family won't look the same for other people, and they just can't relate. And it's hard. It's hard to manage, especially when you don't have someone else that knows what it feels like and what it looks like.
I love what Asia said, because it's so true. I think the other part about it is I found that I was focusing on like the DM5, you know, the characteristics and, you know, what the doctors were telling me. And then I was forgetting that my son was a child. He was an individual. He was a person, and that autism didn't define him. You know what I mean? So when I learned to really understand him and what he needed, it made it easier for me to go find the resources that was going to work for him in my household, versus trying to get all the resources. And I'm like, I'm just going to try to get it all, you know? And I'm like, no, it's not, it isn't going to work for him. So truly understanding and taking the time to see and identifying what autism meant for him. And it made it so much easier for me to advocate for his needs.
I love that. It's finding that camaraderie among each other and finding that strength among each other, and knowing that you all are fighting not only to advocate the world, but advocate for each other. and understanding that without that education, without you all sharing your experiences, it's not going to change. And with that, you know, Yahaira, you touched on something. Sometimes you can get information overload that can sometimes be a struggle. So with this journey that you all have been having, you know, what have been your struggles? I know access to information has definitely been one, but I think that's one that we consistently see. And I think we're going to consistently see. But what other struggles have you seen, whether it's been within your communities, whether it's been within your families, whatever the case may be, whatever you're comfortable sharing, definitely enlighten us this evening.
Can I say that for me, my son is going to be 3 in July, and he got diagnosed when he was 20 months. And I think for me, it was even in my own household, my husband, he was very adamant that something wasn't wrong with his son, that he was just going to do everything on his own time and he would be fine. He just needs to catch up and everything. And from the jump, I knew because I worked with children who are autistic. So I saw the signs and I was like, no, this is, and so it was a really big thing. And I know from even my friends who have children who have autism, they said a lot of it almost broke their marriage because it was like they were arguing back and forth. No, there's nothing wrong with my son. There's nothing wrong with our daughter. They just need to catch up. And I'm like, no. Now he's completely supportive. I mean, he even takes him to his therapies. And so he's like, now I'm understanding and I'm seeing more. And I think that's so awesome. But that was one of my struggles, was just dealing with his dad not wanting to realize he had autism.
And Priscilla, thank you for your honesty and thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people needed to hear that. We don't get that real, we don't get that honest, and understanding that within our families, we have to face a lot of this. We have to understand that it's like, even Tia mentioned it, no one's exempt. No one is exempt. It's happening. And it's how you take that and make it a beautiful thing. It's how you take it and you educate other people. It's how you take it, you get on board and you make it work for you, you make it work for your child. Does anyone else want to share on that topic right before we move on? Oh, I do see some questions. I don't know.
Yes. Well, it's not so much the problems with other people in autism, it's more so the problems that autism creates for the person who has it. Well, for me, I have a noise sensitivity, and when people shoot too many questions at me, especially when yelling, I just kind of freeze and don't talk, which makes the situation worse. So, guess for example, a teacher at my school, well, my earlier school, one time started yelling at me because I was talking to my mother because for when she was trying to pick me up from school. Apparently, the rule has stated that phones were not allowed to be used within school times, and it was out of school. The teacher starts yelling at me. My mom's on the phone. She, she starts yelling at me. What's happening? What's going on? What's happening? All I say is that I have to call you right back. He starts yelling at me. I don't know what to do or say because he's mad at me. I'm staring at him down. He's the authority of this person. My mom comes in and then gets the whole situation figured out because apparently none of the teachers that were there actually kind of had a full understanding of the rule. And so that rule was changed very quickly.
So definitely miscommunications are part of that struggle. Miscommunications and not understanding different levels. Like you all were mentioning earlier, different levels to autism, different levels of communication, different levels, different types of autism, and not even, just stopping to ask you as simple as, James, are you okay? And I think sometimes we do have to take a step back and address the situation and not assume everyone is on the same level and everyone is at the same level of understanding, because that's how we run into situations like this.
So I'll just add to that, particular situation. Yeah, I played the mommy role and I jumped out the car real quick to address that situation because, the expectation of, right? And so everybody's expectation of what a teacher should behave like and what the student should behave like. And when you have, somebody who has James's characteristics, he shut down. And so I guess I say it to say, in a traditional environment, right? And my two children attend parochial schools. So in that setting, it's not like they have a large amount of disability specialists and what have you. So, they're going off what the parent is giving. They may have taken a few classes, but in that environment, it becomes tough because I can't go in and educate every single teacher that is going to interact with my son. And that became difficult because now, as somebody who's in high school, it's not one or two teachers, it's 7 or 8 teachers or the administration. And so, when we talk about the importance of what struggles are and the importance of people having an understanding is, it becomes frustrating to have to go in every year to rehash this conversation with the administration, to rehash the conversation with new teachers. It's like, well, that you have, and he's not the only child with autism in any of his schools, and so it's like, why aren't folks willing at this point to have these conversations? So that's been a struggle. It's that rehashing of the conversation over and over again about, he's not going to receive what you're giving him the way that another child would receive it. And as much as the staff and administration and the teachers want some level of respect, the child does as well, and the parent does for the child. So that's probably one of the biggest struggles that we've had.
Alicia, we have some great conversations.
Yeah, I'm seeing it go on. Go ahead.
And I just wanted to bring one because it's a segue into what Tia was pretty much referring to. Is I don't know if we have any educators in the room or people who have resources, but one of the questions was focused on what ways can teachers and/or professors can help their students with autism with their potential goals. So I don't know if we have any educators in the room or someone from Autism Speak who can talk about that.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebekka. I actually work with Autism Speaks. I think I put a message in there for I forgot who it was, Victoria as well. I am not an educator myself. I am, in blank terms, I guess, a professional fundraiser and event planner. But my mom is actually an educator. So I've been around it for, 15, 16 years now as well. I definitely think a lot of the resources depends on multiple things. So there's a student-teacher relationship, definitely wherever those open doors are. If one person opens the door and has that conversation, makes it a lot easier. There's also, it depends on your school system. So some school systems will have stuff already in place. Other school systems need to have those very vocal parents, other teachers, advocates, open up, have those conversations, open those doors for them. And then the biggest part of everything, it's called an IEP, for in short and full, it's called an individual education plan. And that's going to outline all of the needs that the student really needs. So that can come from needing a paraprofessional with them at all times. That could be needing extra time on a test, going to another room that's quieter. I'm from Massachusetts. I know a bunch of you guys I saw were too. So with the MCAS, a student could go into a separate room, have a little bit more time than what's already allotted. And then the other things as small as needing more time in the hallways between your classes. All of that's going to get mapped out in an IEP. I personally, especially with someone on the spectrum, typically find that having an advocate for these meetings is very helpful. Sometimes these advocates are parents themselves that have already gone through it or currently going through it. And then other times it's somebody who has a BCBA type degree, they've done the therapy sessions before. So it definitely varies, and there's a lot of check boxes to go through, but there's definitely a lot of help out there. And then on a kind of mixing into that, if you go on to the Autism Speaks website, and I can give everybody links after the call as well, we have a resource guide that you can organize based on your need. That could be school resources, it could be needing swimming classes, really anything. And then you can also do it by your location and how many miles away from where you are you willing to travel. And it will pull all of those resources for you as well.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you.
Rebekka. Well, I was going to say, while you were talking about resources and tools, I just wanted to know what parents and youth are using right now. Have you developed any spreadsheets, or what do you take with you when you go into the schools so that you're armed and ready to kind of educate the school as to what your child does and what your child needs?
So not all children get the IEP. Some of them get 504s. From my own experience, James didn't test and have issues that required an IEP. That was horrific because I was like, he needs something. So, you know, he needed a 504 in order to get some of those accommodations that Rebekka had just mentioned, like extra time in the hallways to move through classes, extra test taking time, those things. I will say that, you know, if somebody tells you that your child does not qualify for an IEP, but you feel like that's not the answer, to continue to push for and seek some of those other resources in terms of supporting your child. Because I believe that some certain points through the process after being diagnosed, you know, we got a lot of he doesn't need. And as a parent, I'm like, no, he needs. So as a parent, you definitely have to make sure that you are pushing back on this system, quote unquote system, to say, no, I feel like he needs that, and not just take that no, and, you know, not have that support for your child as you move through.
So, go ahead.
Party for the Department of Education, I just want to piggyback on Tia Daly's comments regarding IEPs versus 504s. I want to stress that you should absolutely fight for an IEP versus a 504 when it comes to educational laws and regulations. And if there's a process in terms of appealing challenges that you may have, your rights are very limited with a 504 in terms of how far up the legal chain you can go. The IEP affords you all possible legal remedies under state and federal law to support your child and get them the access that you want. Oftentimes, parents are afraid to fight for an IEP because they're fearful that their child won't receive any services. And so legally, if the school believes that your child has any specific diagnosis that requires accommodations and supports, they legally require to institute those accommodations until a resolution is reached regarding the IEP versus the 504. Now, if you don't agree with your school's decision, if they told you that you cannot get an IEP and you are only able to qualify for a 504, I always tell parents to reject that, because the school districts are then legally required to send that rejection
to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we have another agency called the Bureau of Special Education Appeals that affords you the opportunity to go before, we call it the BSEA, go before the BSEA. They are a, shall I say, impartial mediator, and they will look at all the evidence that's been provided by you as the parent and by the school district, and they will make the determination as to whether or not the child qualifies for the IEP. So don't simply take the school's word for it. The other benefit of being at the BSEA is that you can have anyone at the table with you to represent you, so you don't even have to speak if you want to have an advocate, an attorney, or anyone else. So oftentimes, you know, schools are inundated. I've worked in a school as a special education team chair. Oftentimes they're just trying to push paperwork forward and go on to the next student, next evaluation. Do not allow them to push your child forward until you're absolutely satisfied that you have received all possible accommodations that your child is needing.
And thank you for sharing that, Stacey. I did put that in the chat box just in case you are seeking for an IEP and you are turned away. She did mention that you should reach out to the Bureau of Special Education Appeals to see if you can get that decision overturned so that you can get that IEP and get the full benefits that everyone's been discussing, especially that Rebekka was disclosing in terms of the tools and access that's available to you. And as we progress, I know right now the IEP, the 504, they differ. But even with the differentiation, what I want to say and what I want to applaud about our panelists and the people that are participating, one, thank you so much for all that you're sharing that I see flowing through the chat right now, but you're excelling. And I would love for you all to share the different areas that you are excelling and share how you're excelling and what's helped you get to that position. What's your thriving force? What's your passion? What's pushing you to keep going?
So somewhere I'm striving is that I'm an all-A student at my school. I'm a very great musician, and really I'm just really doing well during school, and I'm also in a city orchestra in addition to my school.
Amir, I just want to say congrats. Like the fact that you love, and I did read that, you know, in your bio earlier, you're playing the cello, you're amazing at music, and it's something that you're not just passionate about, but you're great at it. And I can already sense that even with that greatness, it's not that you're cocky, you're confident in what you're great at. And I love that because you're a straight A student and you're doing it with confidence. And I can see that you're excelling in your gifts. So I appreciate that. I applaud you for that. And I want to thank you for sharing that. And what do you think is helping you to continue to have that success?
Well, what's really helping me is my parents, the community that's around me, and I guess teachers and friends as well. And really, I wouldn't be at that place if it weren't for like everyone else, if it weren't for everyone around me. Oh yeah. Also, my mom tells me if I do what I'm supposed to do, then I do then I get to do what I want to do.
That's always usually a good answer. So doing what you're supposed to do will always get you to do what you want to do. So James, do you have anything to add at that? How are you thriving? How are you excelling?
Well, I guess this term or last term I got first honors that year. I like to create music sometimes, and I also like to draw. But my passion is to want to become a video game designer, because I've always liked I always like the behind the scenes of how does this work, how does that work, and all of that, and my love for gaming kind of tied into each other, and that's how it kind of started. I'm also learning how to play piano now. It's been a really fun time, and it's still helping me with with me creating music.
Hey Jay,
Go ahead.
I have the same goal as you. I also want to become a game designer.
Oh, really? Wait, which part? Program, music, or well, probably obviously music.
No, programming.
Oh,
So when y'all get ready, you can program and design and do your music together and have your first video game to come out together, right? Okay. Just make sure you let us know so we know how to find it and promote it for you. And for my parents, how are you seeing them thrive from beginning to where they started till now?
So when my son was diagnosed, there was no eye contact. He didn't say anything. He's still nonverbal, but now since we did early intervention and he's going through therapies, he looks at us a lot more. He now stops when we say no. He looks at us when we call his name. He's now using sign language to tell us what he needs, which was a huge thing for us. When he's hungry, he'll take my hand and lead me to the kitchen, like, hey, there's food in here, give it to me. So I have seen a lot of strides in him, and he didn't walk till he was 24 months. And now I can't get him to sit down anywhere. He just wants to keep going. So he has made a lot of strides, and I think that is due to early intervention.
Love it, love it. Keep them coming. Let me know what's going on. Where they're thriving. How are they excelling?
Can I say something? So my brother, he is 28 years old, sorry. He just had his birthday in March. He's nonverbal, autistic, doesn't speak at all. But I would say his improvements have definitely been him actually talking. I could probably say 2 years ago, I heard him say hello for the first time. With me knowing him for 2 years ago, I just heard him for the first time say hello. So I definitely see strides. It's really hard. It's really, really hard, especially I would say in the 90s, they didn't have many resources to help children with autism. So he definitely grew up lacking a lot. But, you know, we tried as much as we can to push him, put him out there. And he did learn a couple sign languages, and he does do the same thing, dragging my mom to the kitchen to say he's hungry, or he'll go like this and go like this because he wants to eat. But you know, it does take a lot, and it takes a lot of stride, but yeah.
I love it. So using different modes of communication, finding your passion to push you towards greatness, and you know, just seeing their growth, continuous growth, and knowing that it doesn't stop there, knowing that, as you all said, that it's constantly evolving. That's what I love about the stories you all are sharing, is that every day is different. Every experience is different. And with that growth that you all have seen, what is one goal that you all are looking towards, whether it's, you know, this year, next year, or within 5 years? What's one goal you see for yourself, if you are autistic, or for a family member?
I would like to destigmatize autism. A lot of the stuff that we do in Autism Sprinter is to kind of change the narrative of autism, because I feel like there's this narrative of autism that kind of puts people in a box. And so if a lot of people who follow me know that I kind of use this thing, disabilities, kind of like dis the label, because, you know, people are humans, right? And so whether they're nonverbal, verbal, or they have, you know, limited skills or whatever, they're still individuals, and everyone possesses some form of fire in them, some form of expertise, and we got to build on those expertise that our children have. Even if they're nonverbal, there's something that they're really good at. What is it that they're really good at? And let's build on that. And most importantly, bring more autism awareness in urban communities, in the communities of color, and having more conversations like this.
Well, I'm all for it. Definitely having more conversations, destigmatizing. Come on, keep sharing those goals. What else are you looking for within the next year, 3 years, 5 years, whether it's within the next 3 months?
Actually, when I grow older, I wish to go on a journey of self-discovery. Just travel to different countries and learn culture, and within the traveling, I get to find something within me.
I love it.
In
Having
the
that
chat room, we have a couple of things. We have early diagnosis is the key. Want my son to be more independent, positive, and complete college successfully.
all achievable.
This is Rebekka again. I think one thing that I've been really interested in, definitely recently, at Autism Speaks, we've been focusing very heavily on adult transitioning. In the last year or so, it's definitely come a long way. I actually have been with Autism Speaks as of 2 years today. And so in that period, I've definitely seen a lot of changes, but it definitely varies depending on your states. Being in New England, I focus very heavily my work in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. In both of those states end resources at like 21, 22. They're still young adults, so like there's resources they can still access, or they should be able to access. So seeing that change in the near future would be amazing, so that those young adults can continue to thrive and continue to learn more skills.
I love that Rebekka mentioned that. I think that's something a lot of people don't really think about is that transitioning and preparing our youth to one day, discover life on their own. And James, you painted that perfectly. It's a journey of self-discovery, and knowing that you're going to be okay, and knowing that you can enjoy life, you can enjoy all that life has to offer, and see the world, and know who you are, and know that you're entitled to every gift that this world has for you, and know that you're going to be okay, and not just okay, but better than okay, because of all that you've been equipped with along this journey. So with knowing that those are our goals, and seeing a future and seeing hope in that future, what advice would you all give to a person who may not have been tested as yet, meaning in terms of the family member that's looking to get tested, or a person that just found out they're autistic, or someone that might be struggling? What advice would you give to them?
So some advice I'll give them, like, autism isn't something to bring you down. It's just something to help you, bring you up and above and beyond.
Yes, love that.
I would like to say that don't think of autism as something that's hindering you. Think of it as a unique trait that's a part of you. It's what allows you to be you. If it wasn't a part of you, you wouldn't probably be the person that you are now.
Very well said. Come on, parents, don't let these kids out you.
I think
I
they
would just
answered it
say
all,
that
didn't
I would just say to change the perspective and look at the person from the person's point of view and see them as a person and an individual. An autism diagnosis is not a death sentence. I can't tell you that the road will be easy because it's not. The symptoms, especially when they're young, are very hard to manage. But when you look at them as a person, it changes everything that you see.
Yahaira?
I don't know. Like, to me, it's just, as like everyone's saying, is see them as individuals. You know, they live in our communities. They're part of and I hate to use they. Our siblings, our cousins, our children, our neighbors, they're no different than us. They're just people. They have feelings. They have, they want to be included. And that's a whole other conversation that oftentimes we're not as inclusive as we should be. And so just respecting that everybody comes to a space with a unique challenge that doesn't necessarily have to have a bad connotation to it.
Hey, Alicia,
I would,
a question that was directly
To Jane.
for James.
Yep.
James, what was the best thing your mom did to help you organize your day?
a lot. I can't really narrow it down. She's been one of my most avid advocates along with the rest of my family. And I would have to say the best thing that she helped me with was the getting rid of the school planner. Just some advice for people who are diagnosed, or more so children. It may not. This is my experience so far. It may be for other people, but do not use the school planner, because when you get into greater grades, you always have to flip to the next. You have to flip to that day. Go down the thing to see what class you have, especially if the days rotate. What my mom did was gave me a notebook calendar that you would just be able to write in what the class is and then what the homework is. It's enough room. You don't always have to go down and go into the other subjects and then not have enough room for that one and then keep going down, down, down. It was a great thing, and I still use it to this day, and it's helped me a lot.
I love that. And that actually just segued into a two-part question I have for all of you. Why is it important to advocate for yourself and for your child? And what are the ways that you all are advocating?
So I think, just based off of our family's experience, it was just not thrown in the towel, not basing it off of what everybody else told us about what it should look like for our family or it should look like for our child. And I think Stacy, was very helpful in giving that information. If they tell you no, and you still think that there should be a yes, or there should be a different avenue to continue to advocate for your child or your loved one, it is tough. And, you know, it's important to seek out those support systems, those support groups, those other family members and sisters that are in for women, or brothers if if you have men, because we don't see that often. I have not seen that often, but find those people that you can bounce ideas off of. It's not one answer, and so continue to seek as many answers. Continue to search. Continue to look. Continue. It's really just to continue, because again, it's going to move. It's an ever revolving door. You know that things are going to change, and so you can't stop at one solution and think that that's going to be the end all be all. You have to continue to keep pushing, and don't let somebody back you into a corner to tell you otherwise, that this is what's going to work for you and your family, when you know that that's not the answer. And you know, in terms of being a parent, just supporting your child, you know, whatever they want, whatever, you know, your child is looking to do, whatever they love, support that. Support that with your whole heart, or try your best to support it, because sometimes some of those things are expensive. But you know, to the best of your ability, just lend your support. And you know, the one thing I always tell James is just be who you are. You know, they already have enough, especially as teenagers, dealing with, you know, all that societal, social, teenagery type pressures that they deal with. And you know, that social aspect might throw them off. But you know, I'm like, if your friend, if it's your friend is going to be cool with you being who you are, without a definition of having autism or not. So
So there was I'm going to explain a little incident that happened with me involving the school, in which basically so we're making the calendar, or like my schedule for next year, because we're going to high school. Basically, the math teacher recommended me Algebra 1, which was the same thing that I did during this school year. And my mom was like, well, is this a mistake or something? And then the teacher replied saying, this is not a mistake, this is my choice. And if you have a problem, you can talk to the other people that are involved with the schedule. And my mom was fumed like a hot stove. Yeah, and she wrote an email to the principal, some school committee members, and some other people who work at the middle school and the high school. And then one day we got an email sent back saying that I was accepted for geometry.
She definitely advocated for you. How did you feel after that?
I felt amazed, and because she fought for me, because she knew that I could strive for excellence, and the fact that that I got an email that quickly flipped my schedule made it even more surprising that people have the power to change things.
That statement right there. You all have the power to change things. And I think that kind of answers the question. Why do you advocate? You all have the power to change things. And you are clearly changing that day after day, year after year. You're changing what this conversation looks like. You're changing what awareness looks like. You're changing what knowledge and understanding looks like. And know that you're valuable. Know that you're worth it to this conversation, and that without you, this narrative doesn't exist. Without you, this positive, thriving force doesn't exist. And the fact that you all are who you are, in spite of what other people say, and that you continue to thrive and you continue to excel. And like you said, you continue to push for excellence, and you do not let people decide who you are, but you make that decision, is why we have to continue advocating for each other. So before we go into our Q&A, panelists, do you all have any final thoughts to close this section out before we pull all of the questions and comments that are coming out?
I would say that, you know, parents are experts too, right? I think that often parents are always coming into a space with a lot of providers, educators, and often we kind of sometimes feel like the small person in the room, not really understanding that we're one of the most powerful people in the room, right? And so kind of understanding that all things should start and end with your child. So any conversation that you have with a provider, any conversation that you have with a teacher or anyone, it starts with your child and it ends with your child. And always know that you are an expert too. So you are I'm Dr. Lopez, I'm speech pathologist Lopez, I am ABA provider Lopez, you know, I'm all things my child services Lopez, right? And so just owning that, you know what I mean? Because I think that we feel so isolated sometimes because we living all things autism. And so, you know, when you're meeting other parents, you just kind of feel disconnected because you're just like, oh, well, these are all the, you know, the things I go through and this, you know, kind of being in a different space. But it's just, I like to make sure that parents know how powerful they are when it comes to the journey of their child and what their future, you know, our future of our children should look like.
So Sora Timmons, I'm gonna release myself to you because I know a lot of people have probably been sending you messages in the chat. Oh wait, hold on, let me unmute you. You're still on mute. Go for it.
So it's been more questions, more comments than questions. A lot of people has been interacting on the chat, but I want to ask this question that was in the chat room because we talk about advocacy. Someone pointed out, coming from immigrant parents, what ways to educate and advocate for children who has autism, because sometimes immigrant parents see autism as such a disease to the point that I don't want to touch it more so. So what advice can we give to those families on ways to educate and have that mom, you know, that mom-vocate type attitude?
This is a really interesting question because I think that when it comes to disability in the immigrant community, we're a little behind in that because I think that, you know, a lot of these families may not be documented. And so they might be scared to get help. And oftentimes, you know, there's this whole stigma that they're on, you know, they get all this government assistance. I mean, that's a lie. You know, you can't even apply for any form of government assistance in terms of like food stamps and things of that nature if you're not documented. You may qualify for, you know, insurance and things of that nature for your child. So it kind of puts those who are English language learners in a deficit and not being able to get resources. And also in a lot of those in different countries, you know, those disabilities are seen as a hinder. And many parents probably don't even take their children out their house. So there's that major disconnect. And a lot of the work that I'm hoping to do is to destigmatize that. And how do we bring the conversation forward, you know, in multiple languages, make it more colorful, and making sure that we don't leave our English language learners behind in the conversation.
Anyone else want to touch on that question? If not, move on to another question. So I know this question, we talked a little bit about struggle before when it comes to parents. But one particular participant wanted to really know, what has been your biggest frustration being a parent of a child with autism?
Are so many frustration as a parent with a child with autism that what I can tell you is that it comes in the territory. These kids to me are very special. I see them as heaven sent. And sometimes what you as parents know, the others around you do not. They see, most people are ignorant to it. And so if you feed in their ignorance, you will be depressed and you'll be angry. But through it all, I learned to show love and try to educate people, to let them understand that this was not a curse from God. It was a gift from God instead. And we should take time out to respect these children, to treat them like human beings. And when my frustration would come, for example, I take my kids to the doctor, to the store, or any place of, a business or so, and my child, I have no control over him doing certain things. Like my son would go straight across and take the food out of someone's hands. And my God, I felt like I was going to bore the floor and go right down in it and cover myself. And for years, I did that. I didn't want to go to church with my son. I didn't want to go a lot of places because I couldn't deal with how he behaved. But over the years, after prayer and getting in touch with heaven, those of us who believe in a God, I asked him to take away my frustrations and help me to be bold and to go with pride with my son, because this is what he blesses me with. And time again, I would go and I would say, if my son did something wrong, I would say, sir, miss, I'm very sorry. It comes with this territory. If I have to pay for something, I would pay for it. And other than that, a lot of people learn through my acknowledgement of what they go through, what their experiences are. And a lot of people who are actually learning are a little bit more understanding. And they would say, that's okay. How old is he? How do you deal with this every day? And so you build relationships. So out of my frustration, I overcome by building relationships and educating people, and try to share this thing that goes on that's called autism, and to let them know that these people are human beings. They just have their challenges, and they have to learn patience and work with families. Be understanding, and so that we all can be overcomers. But these are bright little people. I love my son, and anywhere I go and I see autistic people, it doesn't have to be my child. I hug them, I play with them, I give them high fives. I said go, and I make them feel like they're a part of the world, the community. So it's just for us to give a little bit more love and have a little bit more understanding. And if we all do this, this world will become a brighter and a better place.
Agreed. Thank you, Mom.
Yes.
Thank you for that. That was like, ooh, it'll touch me. I don't know about y'all. Anyone else want to talk about, their frustration?
I think with my son, it's, he has a lot of, he builds up a lot of frustration himself because he feels as though we don't understand what he needs right now because he's nonverbal. And so then it goes into a tantrum. And he's been having a lot of those, also partly because he's 2 and there's a terrible 2s, and it's just, that in and of itself is hard. But I think putting autism on top of that is also a little bit harder. And it's, what do you need? And then he can't voice it to us, so then he gets frustrated. And there's times where he's had tantrums for a span of 20 minutes. And then it's taking him somewhere quiet and dark and getting him to settle down and saying, okay, let's start this over. Let's cool down. So that's been one of my big frustrations. But I've also noticed that when I stay calm about it, those tantrums are shorter because he feeds off of my energy and is saying, okay, you're calm, so I don't know why I'm making a big fuss, so let me calm down. You know, but I think also with the, you know, it's just it's the territory, you know, it's just the territory that comes with it. And you learn how to deal with it, and you learn what their needs are, and you learn all these other, it's always a learning process. You never stop learning about it, you know, so that's been one of my biggest frustrations with this.
So I think mine is not necessarily a frustration, but a concern as a parent of 2 teenage Black men, young men. We have to have those conversations. It's in the news every day. You know, they're watching it in the news, they're having conversations, there are books written about it. And so we have to have this conversation about how do they handle themselves when they're out in the street and these things are happening in society. And so to have those conversations, it's a must have conversation, but as a mom, it's scary because, you know, having the experience of a teacher, you know, raising their voice, or, you know, another adult raising their voice, and, you know, just kind of flailing off all kinds of questions and what have you. And you think about, you know, that experience of a police officer, and my child is not able to calm himself enough or get into a place enough to verbalize, you know, at that point in time. It's a fear. It's scary. It's a scary thought to not know that, you know, even overall, that my son is not going to be able to handle himself potentially in that situation. So we continue to have the conversations about how, but that's us having the conversation about how. Fortunately, he's never been in that situation, but God forbid he gets in that situation, then what? And so, you know, you go back to the law enforcement, and what training are they receiving? You know, what are they hearing on the subject of autism? What are they learning? Because, you know, I've gone back to friends who are law enforcement, and that 1 3 or 4 day training that they may get, it can't possibly encompass all the facets of ASD. It can't possibly encompass the experience that a child is nonverbal, a child might not be able to respond to. You know, you might have an overall, and that's not that, you know, their training is not just specifically for children with autism, it's mental health. So that's a concern for me. That's a struggle for me day to day, to know that, you know, he's just walking to the train station, and if unfortunately, with society being the way it has been over the past however long, that might happen. And then what do you do? And again, even if you're having a conversation, what do you do?
Yeah, that right there, that takes us to like a webinar part 2. That's a whole other side of things where we're talking about, you know, police enforcement, and just dealing with autism or other mental health illnesses. So, you know, thank you for that. To hear about all these frustrations and concerns, to the parents with children with autism, do you have community-based support groups and family groups that you are able to connect with and talk to for support?
So out here in California, where I live in Lancaster, California, we actually have 2 mom groups out here, and it's mom groups for children with autism. And so before all this virus stuff happened, we met once a month. And if anyone had new information or new resources, they would share it with the group. We also have out here the Academy for the Advancement of Children with Autism. And it's an autism school. And it's just for children with autism. And they teach them everything from academics to life skills. And they say, okay, you know, they have a cooking class, they have how to dress yourself and do buttons and zippers. And I mean, it encompasses every part of life in this school. And it goes from kindergarten to a senior in high school. So it's a big school, and it's a great resource for a lot of parents out here. So we do have a lot of community resources out here, and we're very blessed in that way to have all these resources for our son. And I think that's amazing. Some communities aren't so blessed. And I think that's why it's great to have this conversation and to share those resources and stuff. So.
Anyone else for that question?
And for us over here at Autism Sprinter, I have a Facebook group called Autism Sprinter specifically for families. We have providers there. We have autistics there in the space. And so if anybody's interested to be in a Facebook group, I know there's so many, but if you're interested in being in a Facebook group, we do have one. And I know Asia's here, and Asia and I actually know each other from being Autism Sprinter. And then there's another fellow autism mom that we hang out with who has a social media handling called Boston Girl TV. And so once a month before this pandemic, Asia, myself, Monique, and a few of us would hang out once a month and go out to eat, have, you know, a drink or two. And so we've been able to do that. And so I'm, you know, offering, if anyone would like to join our Facebook group, definitely join us. And, you know, we have a real small collective and very, very friendly.
Yeah. All right. So if no one has, I have one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to Autism Speaks to talk a little bit about resources, because I know it's getting late, but this is a great conversation and I hope we can continue it. This is a very multifaceted question, so hopefully we have some answers to this. Many people tend to believe that vaccinations predisposes kids to getting autism. How do we combat that issue for future parents who question getting their kids vaccinated? Deep question. I know. I should not save that for the last one, but
I mean, I kind of will say this: in understanding the immigration community, and understanding the West Indian community, and understanding communities that think this can be fixed, I think that might be kind of where people might think this mentality does come from. That if I give you medication, I can treat you. If I know early, if I detect it early enough in the womb, maybe I can fix you. But again, it's those myths. It's the lack of education. It's the not understanding. It's the not willing to understand and accept that you have a beautiful, gifted child, and that your beautiful, gifted child is just going to think different, learn different, understand different. And until we start changing our mindset, these myths are just going to continue.
I'm sorry, it seems like a person has something to say, so I'm going to try to unmute them, but I don't see the person's name. Makita, are you?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay.
I just feel like, I guess the vaccine aspect of it, I feel like to each its own, because a lot of people have different speculations based on vaccination, the correlation between vaccinations and autism. Personally, I'm not gonna lie, and I'm gonna keep it 100 here. I feel like there's some type of correlation between vaccines and autism, because based on the story my mom told me, as you know, my brother's older than me, he was given a shot and then he was not talking after that entirely. And that was it. So, and before that, he was actually saying one or two words. So I feel like there might be something. There might be some type of, connection, but no one really wants to dig deep into it, because what doesn't matter to the government, it's being pushed behind. Yeah.
Good point. Good point. So if no one has any further questions, I wanted to turn over to Rebekka, because she's going to offer some more resources on how you can still, advocate and educate and celebrate autism. So if Rebekka, if you're still here.
Hi, I'm here.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rebekka Farquharson. I'm we have 3 field managers in the New England office. I think I mentioned it earlier. I've been with Autism Speaks for 2 years now. I personally oversee our New Hampshire and our Western Massachusetts walk. And I also assist our executive director with our founders walk on Nantucket in the summertime. I also support all of our volunteers, such as James and Marcus Daly. They've helped us out quite a bit. So thank you guys for that. I also assist a lot of our families and our donors, and I run all of our New England social media platforms. So if you ever see Autism Speaks New England, it's probably something I've put together. But yeah, so I've been around the autism community pretty much my entire life. I started helping out in disability classrooms, starting in 3rd grade, giving up lunch periods and recess to go and hang out with the students that were in those classrooms. I'm from Natick, Massachusetts, and there's a special needs and disability camp in Natick called Camp Arrowhead. I volunteered there several weeks in the summer. Volunteers get paired one-on-one with a student with special needs, and you basically become best friends for a week. So it's a really fun experience. So I definitely have seen autism. My best friend's nephew, I typically just call him my own nephew. He has very severe autism. He goes to Crossroads School in Marlborough, Massachusetts. Personally, one of my favorite resources, he was there for 3 weeks and learned how to wave hello and was on his way of learning how to tie his shoes at 10 years old. So it was a really amazing impact for him leaving public schools and going to Crossroads. But yeah, just like everybody was saying, we have plenty of resources with Autism Speaks. I personally really focus on event planning and fundraising efforts, but we do have what we call the Autism Response Team, or ART is how we A-R-T. You'll see it labeled that way. It's an English and Spanish available telephone line as well as email. I personally recommend email to people. You'll get a response usually a lot quicker that way. It's usually a 24 to 48 hour turnover rate via email. Phone can be a little bit longer, especially with COVID going on right now. Our calls and inquiries have pretty much quadrupled since all of this started, but all of us are doing everything we possibly can. I'll put some links in the chat box for you guys. We do have some COVID specific resources right now for people looking. A lot of therapy centers and schools, of course, have been closed for the rest of the year as of this week. But there are still many centers doing telehealth. It has been a monumental help resource with all of this happening. Oh, I think I just sent that to James only, sorry. There we go. So yeah, telehealth has definitely been very helpful. Of course, we do have plenty of students that they do not want to sit in front of screens all day. I know one of my moms in New Hampshire messaged me today and was like, oh my God, my son starts screaming every time his teacher comes on the computer. He doesn't do this normally. I've met her son. He's amazing. He just runs up and hugs everybody and has smiles all the time. And it really broke my heart when she was like, he's miserable, because I've never seen him like that before. So there are plenty of ways that we can go through all of this right now. Of course, we do everything the CDC says with social distancing and 6 feet and whatever else may be around. So I definitely recommend that link for immediate help if needed. Other than that, we do have a resource guide on our website. I can also put that link in the chat for you guys. I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the resource guide I find amazing because you can filter your searches to specific therapies or specific kinds of resources, advocates, that sort of thing. And you can also keep it very specific to your location. So if you're in Boston, you probably don't want to find somebody that's out in California. It's not really going to help. So this has always been a great thing. The resource guide is always being updated. We take in new resources and companies very periodically, especially recently. We redid our website as of February 15th, I think it is. We completely rebranded Autism Speaks. Many of you guys probably know us from our puzzle piece. We do still have the puzzle piece. We just incorporated a spectrum of colors into our logo. It's no longer a solid blue. We do, of course, use our blue everywhere. So that has not gone away. We've just involved more of the rainbow spectrum, as you will. So there's a lot of that going along as well. So as we rebrand, we open other things. My favorite resource locally, as you guys were all talking about, trying to find community, trying to make sure to spread the news, you're not alone. There's others around. In that case, my favorite thing is the Autism Speaks Walk. In New England, we host 6 walks. We cover 6 states. We do not have a walk in every state, unfortunately, yet, but we do have plans to expand more. We have a walk in Boston in October. The Boston Walk is one of my favorite events of the year. We are right on the Boston Common. It's a Sunday morning, 9 to noon. We have a great time, face paint, tattoos, there's some music. It's a quick loop really around the common, and then you can come back and hang out, and there's characters to hang out with, superheroes. We usually have the soccer team, the Revolution there with some games. So it's a lot of fun. You can network with other families, you can speak with other autism moms and dads, and there's just a lot to learn. As I said before, we have 6 walks. So there's Boston, Nantucket, 2 in Connecticut, Hartford, East Hartford, and we are going to Quasi Park in Middlebury this year. We typically call that one Western Connecticut, as it's usually in Waterbury. And the last one, the last 2 is New Hampshire. We're at the Fisher Cat Stadium in Manchester. And Western Massachusetts is at a brand new location this year at Burleigh Park in Palmer, Massachusetts. It's probably like 5 minutes off the Mass Pike. So it's really fun. Every walk is different from sizes of crowds. I would say the Western Connecticut and Western Massachusetts walks are probably our smallest ones. So if your family is not a large crowd, that's definitely one to go to. But as an organization, we also have 74 walks across the entire country, including 3 walks in Canada. So there's lots of opportunities, no matter where you live, no matter where you're from. If you're going on vacation and happen to have a walk nearby, it's really fun to go see what it is. I learn about a new location pretty much every day, especially after coming to a work from home location with everything going on. So I definitely recommend reaching out to Art if you have any resource questions, if you have any kinds of legislation or government questions. That stuff is changing constantly. We actually had a call today that we do tend to find that special needs legislation, education legislation takes forever normally to get passed. Sometimes it's 1 bill a month or 1 bill every 3 months. As of last month, there was 3 bills passed in 1 month with everything going on with COVID. So things are going very quickly. Things are changing every single day. So definitely that COVID link I sent you guys, we pretty much update that at least once a day. You can pretty much guarantee it's going to have updates probably 4 to 5 times a week. So that's very good if you guys are looking for different kinds of the stimulus checks coming out. We're dealing with a lot of that stuff right now. We have our advocacy team is going to meetings daily. We are doing specific state calls. I'm pretty sure, I think like New York is tomorrow. So you can always check that stuff up on Facebook as well. And then I can also send you guys the New England group link for Facebook. We are constantly adding people every day. We really use that as a community chat. You'll notice a lot of the posts come from me, but it's open for anybody to post. You can put your own stories on. If you have questions, if there's a resource that you found incredibly helpful for you and your family, and somebody else might need it, we love those conversations. So I can also throw that into the chat for you guys as well. But yeah, I mean, if anyone has any questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to answer them.
So I do have a question.
Mhm.
You mentioned the stimulus check, and I noticed that they said that, well, in New York, the requirement was anyone that wasn't on disability, and if they were on disability, if they were living with a parent, they weren't qualified for a check either. Why is that?
So I personally don't know a ton of the background information. I know that there was some kind of requirement that if they were over the age of 17, there was something. If a parent claims them as a dependent, it would go to the parent. I know there was a lot of conversation within our advocacy to try to figure the rest of that out. As of today, it's still an ongoing conversation. They didn't really have answers for us today on our call either. But I can absolutely, if you want to connect with me, I know Tia has my email, and I can connect you with our advocacy department, and they can absolutely cover that whole conversation for you.
Yes, please. I don't know how I could get that information.
Yeah, no problem. Here, I'll put my email in the chat as well. So if anyone has those kind of questions, I can connect you to the correct department.
Thank you.
And just to let you know, for everyone, every link that we have that's on this thread, we will be sending that out via email after this webinar. So with that, I'm going to, we're at 8:52, so we're trying to wrap this up by 9 o'clock. So I'm going to just ask one more time if anyone have any questions. If not, I'm going to turn this over to our lovely chapter president and moderator for tonight. And hopefully we can continue this conversation on other topics related to autism.
So everyone, we just want to say thank you so much for joining us this evening and just sharing your evening with us. Thank you for sharing your experiences and just letting us take a glance into your life and who you are and what makes you so awesome. Thank you to all of my sorority sisters from Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, especially my chapter sorors from Omega Eta Zeta Chapter, our fraternity brothers from Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, as well as all of our Divine Nine organizations that have joined us, all of our amazing panelists who are not just panelists, but they're powerhouse of knowledge. Like you all said, you're not just parents and mothers, but you're knowledge writers in your own right. And you know exactly what you know about this topic, and you are charged with so much. So thank you for just sharing with a glimpse and sharing with the community that was on tonight and allowing them to contact you and contact and partner with each other just so we can keep this conversation going. We want to wish you all a great evening, but before we go, just informing you that you all will get a survey that's going to come via email. With that survey, we do have some upcoming events. As you know, everything's pretty much gone virtual. We will be doing March for Babies on March 15th, as well as the ACS Relay for Life on June 20th. And those are all virtual. If you all would like to join us or support us in either of those efforts, we will share these links with you all as well. Our teams are giving online and virtual, but even if you all want to do the steps and support us and, you know, make your own team, please feel free to do so. Everything counts, especially during these times. And with that, the survey that you all are going to receive, we would love to keep conversations such as these going. And we want to know what other topics you want us to carry on. And even the topics that we touched upon this evening, if you would like us to dive a little deeper, please express that when you take the survey so that we can carve out time in our schedule to keep that conversation going and have our experts come back. Yes, our parents are experts, our youth are experts, and maybe they can also invite other people to that conversation. But that's what this is about. It's about building our community, building our knowledge, advocating for one another, and knowing that with that knowledge, we are empowered to do greatness, because nothing else will come out of that except pure excellence. So with that, we are hoping and praying that you all stay safe. Please stay positive. Continue to foster this amazing energy that you all have been building this evening. Share this with your family, your friends. It is on Facebook Live. So you all will get that link as well when you get the survey. And we just want to say have a great night. Thank you again for joining us. And it has been a privilege serving as your moderator. And we hope to see you all soon. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you. It was great.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye, y'all.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night, everyone.
Good
Night.
Bye.
Thank y'all for coming.
Thank you.